Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. At this time, 7:02 p.m., the meeting is called to order. The date is June 12, 2008. The board consists of 5 members and 2 alternates. An alternate takes full part in discussions of the board and becomes a voting member in the absence or conflict of interest of a regular member. Present this evening are members Betty Hollow, John Golsey, Greg Lavelle, myself, Muriel Frederick, Chair. Also present this evening are Zoning Administrator Steve Pearson and Paul Eschenbacher, our Acting Secretary. The board operates according to the following procedure. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator will cite the specifics of the refusal. The appellant or representative then will state the case for granting the appeal. The testimony will next be taken from those who support granting the appeal, then those who wish to speak in general comment, and then those who support denial of the appeal. Following all testimonies, the board will receive concluding remarks from the appellant. Discussion from the floor then will be closed. The board will deliberate and render a decision. Under Athens City Code 230703B, the board has the power to grant such variances from the code as will not be contrary to the public interest, so that the spirit of the code shall be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. Athens City Code Section 230710C requires that variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board makes specific findings of fact based directly on the evidence provided to it that the following 6 criteria are met. Practical difficulty or undue hardship. There must exist a practical difficulty or undue hardship caused by exceptional circumstances pertaining to the specific piece of property. Number 2, exceptional circumstances. There must exist exceptional circumstances or conditions applying to the property or its intended use that do not in general apply to properties in the same zoning district. Number 3, preservation of equal property rights. It must be determined that literal interpretation of the code would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same vicinity, while granting the variance would not convey special privilege. Number 4, minimum variance. It must be determined that the variance is the minimum required to make reasonable use of the property. Absence of detriment. It must be determined that the granting of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent properties, nor materially impair the purposes of the code or the public interest. And last, not of a general nature, the variance sought must not be of a general or recurring nature, such that the situation would more reasonably be handled by changing the law. The board also is empowered to hear and decide applications for conditional use, substitutions for non-conforming use, temporary uses, and appeals where it's alleged by the appellant that there is an error in the decision made by the zoning administrator regarding enforcement and interpretation of the code, and requests for interpretation of the code. Any person who's aggrieved by the decision of the board may file an appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the board's resolution to the appellant. Tonight there are 4 cases on the agenda. Number 0812V for 38 Mulligan Road, which is zoned R1. Patrick and Krista Beatty are the appellants. Number 0813V for 102 West Union Street, which is zoned B1. Abdi Sheikh is the appellant. Number 0814V for 108 Sunnyside Drive, which is zoned R1. Wilson Deaton, is the appellant. And number 0815ISV?
Yes.
Okay. For 19 South Congress Street and Jack's, which is 19 South Congress Street is zoned B3, and Jack Stouffer is the appellant. The board is required by law to take testimony under oath. Anyone wishing to speak this evening, please stand to be sworn. Okay. Do you swear that the testimony you will give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Our first case this evening, then, is number 0812V. It's 28 Mulligan Road in Zone R1, and the appellants are requesting a variance from 230314 to permit installation of a fence with a front yard setback of 0 feet, where 12.5 feet is the permitted minimum. Steve, what can you tell us about the reasons for the refusal?
You should have received in the packet of information, you were provided 2 or 3 drawings related to the site. The property's a little wider. It's a little over 75 feet out of Mulligan Road. It's a long, narrow lot, parallels Curtis Street, and goes back to a width of 54.5 feet at the rear property line. And it's the owner's intent to place a fence right on that property line, as indicated on the drawing they provided, along the Curtis Street side, which is a side street setback. The Athens City Code, section 230314, talks about fences, walls, and terraces. It says really that you don't need a permit for a fence. It's not subject to the zoning code, so long as it's 6 feet or less in height and not in the front yard setback. However, on a corner lot, you have 2 front yard setbacks, and that's related to section 230308 yard requirements. It says the side street setback line of any lot platted and existing at the time of the adoption of this code shall not be less than 1/2 of the average depth of the minimum front yard required on any adjoining lot fronting on a side street. So that would, for example, be the properties on Curtis Street, where the front yard setback is 25 feet. Half of that, as the code says, you could build that close, say to Curtis Street, that'd be 12.5 feet. The proposal is just to put this, I believe it's a 4-foot wire fence right on the property line, on the Curtis Street side.
But it would actually be how far from the street?
My understanding is that the property line is approximately 7 feet from the side of the pavement. Curtis Street has a street right-of-way of 30 feet, so, that's, I think a lot of times people think that their property goes clear out to the edge of the pavement or to a curb line, and in cases where properties have been platted, that's usually not the situation. The right-of-way includes areas for water, sewer, storm drainage, those kinds of things too. So to answer your question again, I believe that the property line is about 7 feet from the edge of the pavement on Curtis Street.
But the right-of-way would be?
The same location. Your property line and the right-of-way line are
exactly
the same thing. And again, I believe from looking at the narrative, it's not going to be a solid fence. It's be a fence that you could see through and be 4 feet tall.
Okay. And it's actually narrower at the point at which the property is narrower at the point at which they want to begin the fence than it is on the frontage on Mulligan Road.
Right.
Quite a bit.
The location of the fence is really not anywhere near Mulligan Road. It's clear around the corner and probably 120, 130 feet away from the intersection.
It's absolutely nowhere close to anything at all. It's just out along a road where there's no problem with line of sight. There's no problem with anything that one would think was being addressed with the regulation about corner properties.
Right. I think that's one reason why those setbacks are required on both sides of the street if you own a corner lot. A lot of it, I think, does have to do with line of sight for vehicles. In this particular case, the fence location is nowhere near the intersection of Curtis and Mulligan. As a matter of fact, according to the section of code that I had talked about, 230314, the fence at the rear property line, where it's 54 feet wide, and the entire side of the lot that adjoins to the north, that fence could be permitted. If this was a lot between 2 lots, there would be no necessity to be here tonight either, because there would be no second front yard to be dealing with.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Steve? All right. Then I believe we're ready to hear from the appellants.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, right up there. And when you get to the podium, would you state your name and address for the record and affirm that you've previously been sworn?
Hi, my name is Christina Calvini. I live at 38 Mulligan Road here in Athens, and I'm sworn in. Start.
Yeah. And I'm Patrick Beatty. I live at 38 Mulligan Road, and I was also sworn in. I've got some letters of support from our neighbors, if that would help the committee at all. I made some copies, and I've got originals. Would you like those now?
We'd like to get those, yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see, we have... Steve.
No, it's all the same.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And we're new to this, so the technical terms we may not get quite right, but basically what we'd like to do is put a wire fence in our backyard. As Mr. Pearson explained, our backyard runs parallel to Curtis Street. Curtis is a small dead-end street. It doesn't have a lot of vehicle traffic. It does have a lot of the people in the neighborhood do like to walk on there because it's a quieter road, much quieter than Mulligan. With a dog, we'd like to be able to let him out to play in the backyard and not worry about him taking off to go visit the neighbors' dogs. But what we're looking at is a 4-foot wire fence that would go around the edge of our property. On 2 sides will be in woods, basically, and then the 3rd side would be parallel to Curtis. And what we've been working on is some landscaping so that eventually the fence would be pretty much not visible because we would plant a shrub on the inside of the fence that would grow into a hedge. So we think, the added landscaping would actually enhance the neighborhood because it would just bring some more greenery there. It shouldn't present any problems in terms of, traffic or vision because it is quite a ways from the corner. And with leaving the right-of-way on Curtis, there would still be room for people who walk their kids and their dogs on there to get off the road when they need to. And we're requesting, I guess, just a variance to reduce the setback to, somewhere between 0 and 2 feet. So we'd be fairly close to Curtis, but not in the right-of-way.
Just a question, this is curious. When I heard that you were planning a 4-foot fence, I decided you must have a very small dog.
We just think he's
Or
a
very well behaved.
well-behaved dog. He doesn't, we
Yeah.
keep him in the kitchen during the day with baby gates, and he doesn't think about jumping over them. He's a standard poodle, about 50 pounds,
Oh, he's a smart dog then. He'll
but
figure
he's a good,
He could
Yeah.
figure out the fence.
Well,
but without
yeah.
a fence.
And the idea is we're not going to leave him out there.
It's when you're out there. You want
Yeah,
just,
we want to be able to be out in the yard and work in the yard and let him just kind of hang out and do his thing. We think with the shrub, he's not going to be able to jump that. He may figure out a way, but
Yeah, he probably won't. Just curious. Okay.
I'm sorry that my wife and I didn't write a letter of support on your behalf because
That's all
we
right.
are your neighbor, and I've never seen the dog or heard barking anything at all. So that's,
well, he's come over to
didn't know
visit
you had a
Oreo.
dog. Yeah. My question is that you're going to be how far from the curb? 7 feet? Is that what it is?
Well, and again, because this is new to us, my understanding is the right-of-way is 7 feet, and then the setback would be 12 and a half feet
Okay.
in addition to that. That would put us 19 and a half feet from Curtis, which, John, since you know our yard, that would go
Yeah.
right through some of the existing landscaping and really be too far in, we think.
So
And
what would be the actual physical fence from the curb, from the asphalt?
From the asphalt, probably 7 to 9 feet,
depending on
Yeah.
what you
what your decision
approve.
is.
Yeah.
That's right along the edge of the flower bed that's currently there, I would say.
Right,
It
and,
is.
and we've talked with the landscaper who'd be doing the fencing and the added landscaping about maybe putting it in just a little bit inside the edge of the existing bed and then adding, again, some planting. So we really don't want the fence to be all that visible because that, plants would look better than the fence.
Yeah.
We want John and Vicki to have a nice view.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and we probably have to fix our yard. I'll promise that I would mow my yard more often so that it would look better on your side.
Okay. Okay, Greg, do you have any questions?
No.
Betty, questions? And I think all my questions have been answered. You have a next shot at, if anything comes up that you want to deal with once we've had some discussion from the floor, you're next up, but
Okay.
that's
Okay.
it for now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in support of this appeal, or in general comment, or in objection?
Well, we do have these several
We do
letters.
have a letter from either side, actually.
Three
It's-
letters from
Is it three?
neighbors.
Oh, it is three.
Yes.
Okay, I was counting two. Yes, they have support from the neighbors at 35 Mulligan, at 40 Mulligan, and at 34 Mulligan, and from across the street.
And 2 Curtis.
Yes. Generally, they're all saying the same, that they support the fence as detailed and hope that we will approve it. Just one, they're all similar. Regarding zoning appeal case 0812E, we strongly support the Beatty's plan to construct a fence around their yard at 38 Mulligan. Would like to express our belief that a variance allowing a reduced setback should be granted. As their neighbors, we feel the fence will be a positive addition to our neighborhood. That's from Kent and Dia Knudsen at 35, and the tenor of the other 2 is similar. So that's in support, and we see nothing where anybody seems to have any objection. So unless you have something further that you'd like to say, then discussion from the floor is closed, and we're ready to deliberate and render a decision. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Well, maybe I'll do a neighborly thing. I'll do
Okay.
that for them. I move to grant the variance to the property at 38 Mulligan Road from section 230314 to permit installation of a fence with a front or side a setback of 0 feet, where 12 and 1.5 feet is the permitted minimum.
Can we add
Add it 7
in
feet.
conformance with the plan submitted?
In conformance with the plan submitted. Yeah.
Okay. We have a second?
Second.
All right then. What is the practical difficulty or undue hardship for this property? And, well,
A couple of things. It's on a corner lot, so they have to treat their side as if it were a front, which changes the conditions. They have woods on the other side. It's a very narrow lot in the back and skinny. So it's difficult.
right. It's
And those are also special circumstances too.
and I'd say that the exceptional circumstances were the same as that. It just is, well, the fact is that the area that they want to fence is so far away from the traffic the corner where traffic, so far from the intersection that
There's
it
gonna
makes
be
no
negative impact.
impact.
No.
So that's an exceptional circumstance also, because generally speaking, if you want to do something like that, there is that consideration, but there's not in this case. Preservation of equal property rights would literally, interpreting the code, deprive the appellants of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same vicinity.
We have other neighbors who do have fenced for their dogs within very close by. So
Fences have gotten, particularly for backyards, have gotten to be more and more important to people. A minimum variance, they're only requesting a 4-foot fence, where commonly people in the backyard put up request for 6-foot fences. That would go towards the minimum variance, to my mind. Absence of detriment. Would granting the variance be of any detriment to adjacent properties? Or would any of the purposes of the code or public interest be interfered with?
the only thing about the public interest, if they do has the 6-7 feet from the asphalt, that allows the people who are walking, and there are a lot of people
Right.
walking, to step aside, as you mentioned in your letter, so that vehicles are coming. It's a narrow street. That's
So there's still,
sufficient.
yes, there's still walkway
Yeah,
being
yeah.
provided, which I appreciate, as some people
Sure.
in my neighborhood don't do that. Not of a general nature. The variance sought must not be of a general or recurring nature, such that the situation would be more generally handled by changing the law. It seems to me that this is not of a general nature. The shape of the lot and the situation is just not general. Does anybody feel that it is? No? Okay. And then, in that case, are we ready to take a vote?
Yes.
Right. Betty?
Yes.
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 And I too vote yes. So enjoy your fence and that well-behaved dog of yours. Thank you. All right. Our next case is number 0813V. Well, we, as four members,
We should.
yes. This evening, there are only four members on the board, and 4 votes are required to pass a variance. Or 3 votes, I'm sorry. 3 votes are required. Ordinarily, you have another member to get your 3 votes from. If you feel that you would like to continue your case to another time when we have a short board like this, it is an option that you have to pick up if you care to. Anybody this evening who would care to be continued should just let us know when we call your case.
Maybe they should let us know now so we won't get late.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. If anybody here is feeling that they would like to wait to continue until next month, when hopefully we will have a full board, about it. Anybody? No one picking that one up? Yes?
Are you asking me to answer that right at this moment?
Well, you don't have to answer it right now. We're just giving you the opportunity to answer it right now. If later on this evening, before your case comes up, you've decided that you would prefer to have it heard next month, that is your option. But you can tell us now if you care to also. We just don't want you to, I think you're the last one on the agenda, so we didn't want you to have to sit here all night waiting to tell us if that's what you'd like to do.
I guess I was under the opinion, or the impression, from talking to Mr. Pearson, that July and August were already booked.
If you have, well, how would that work? If they had to be continued until, because the board was short, wouldn't they be able to,
Traditionally, what we've done is the cases that may have been continued take precedent.
that's what I thought.
At the next
So
meeting.
you should be getting at the top of the, well, you'd take precedence over the last one to have been accepted for the next 2 months.
Or the board could hear 5 cases that night also. So I'll have to check and see. I believe next month's agenda is already full. So one of those people would have to
get
be
moved.
knocked back another month, or you could hear 5 cases that night. My preference would be not to have to send somebody a letter and give them the bad news.
Well, I don't
They have
blame
to wait
you.
another month.
But, yeah, and it wasn't your fault that we suddenly had some problems with the board. But anyway, these things do happen. And so you have a little while to decide, but the option exists. So. Our next case is 0813V. It's for 102 West Union Street, which is Zone B1. Abdi Sheikh is the appellant and is requesting a variance from 2311 Table B off-street parking requirements to permit a use requiring 6 accessible parking spaces where 1 accessible and 1 non-accessible space is provided. And Steve, what can you tell us about the case?
Okay. Included in the packet of information that I provided to you was a copy of a resolution in case number 0625V. The Athens Board of Zoning Appeals dated December 15, 2006. So it's just been about a year and a half ago that you heard basically this exact same case and this exact same appellant regarding this exact same property. The problem is Athens City Code section 230710. D is in dog, and this is decisions of the board. That section says the order, no order of the BZA granting the variance shall be valid for a period of longer than 12 months from the date of the order, unless the use commences within such period. So more than a year went by, and therefore the previous variance for parking expired. So that's why we're back again. And basically, this is the same presentation, same information from the end of 2006, same exact variance. The building is set in a vacant condition for more than a year, and that's another reason why it's lost its grandfather in legal non-conforming use for lack of parking. I also included in the packet, I didn't ask for another opinion from the tree commission because that was quite a topic of conversation last time. To create parking, there were quite a few trees that would have to have been cut. And I included in the packet of information just a correspondence to the board from Alvin McWilliams, chair of the Athens City Shade Tree Commission, where they essentially supported the variance in order to save the trees.
Yes.
And I did also provide a drawing for you that indicates where an outdoor area for dining, an outdoor patio, had been previously located when a restaurant did operate at this facility. And it also shows that there's a possibility of 2 cars being parked on the site. So at least for deliveries or employees, there would be some opportunity to park. Those 2 parking spaces would be stacked behind each other, which is not permitted in a B1 zone, but in any case, it's short, the number of spaces required. Parking regulations, 2311 Table B parking requirements are the minimum number of parking spaces necessary for use of a property. In this case, 6 parking spaces are the minimum required. So they have 2 stacked spaces instead of the 6. And that's in order to, as I recall from presentation at the last meeting, to save the trees and to maintain the outdoor dining area.
Any questions?
Well, I have, unless you have some questions.
Thank you. Does anybody? No. Okay. And who's going to make the presentation this evening?
Yes, my name is Abdi Sheikh, 834 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio.
And could you affirm that you have previously been sworn?
Yes. Yeah, basically what we want to do is open a coffee shop, small operation. There would be no deliveries involved. Most of the stuff we go out and buy or shop, deliver the stuff. Because that was I think the problem we had last time, that he was saying that it could be, you have to have a space for delivery. And 0 delivery. There is no cooking. Everything would be brought in. Basically, it's coffee or sandwiches. That's it. So very light.
What is the reason that you have not started up your business in the last year?
Just the many issues. Then we were talking to Mr. Hoy, who owns the building. He was out of town, but now he's back, so he can support us in terms of getting a lot of stuff done. And also, there was another location that we were looking at in Cincinnati, so it was basically a strategic decision. We had to go with that space before we can do this one.
I see. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you intend to use the patio space as a patio space?
Yeah, I mean, that's the main attraction. That's what pulled us towards that building, was
Okay.
the outdoor seating.
Is it your intention to keep the mature trees that are there?
Yes. We want to keep all that.
So none of the trees that currently are there will be removed if you have if you receive your variance to operate
No, I mean,
business.
we want to keep everything as is.
Do you have any questions, either of you? Were both of you present when we heard this last time?
Yes.
And you were also, right? So, hearing it, going through everything all over again, to me, doesn't...
How we voted, but
I will.
individually, but
I don't recall how we voted individually.
Indeed, I'm sure that I did vote yes on this.
Well, I know how I voted on it, but how everybody voted, I don't recall.
Well, it was enough to give them the variance last time.
Yeah.
With the support from the tree commission and the location of the business, the fact that a lot of their traffic will be foot traffic, I was willing to do that.
This letter of support that we have, did we have that last time? This is something new,
I
isn't
don't
it?
remember a lot of support.
No, there is
Yeah, that
a
one's
neighbor,
new.
that's new.
Oh, the people
The,
next door.
yeah, there was last time there was some concern on the part of a neighbor, but this time the neighbor is enthusiastically supporting the business, so.
She just arrived.
Maxine?
Not
Are you
sworn in,
Maxine?
but
Okay.
If I could expound on that just a little bit.
Okay.
The property owner that at the last meeting expressed some concern is no longer the owner of that property. That property has a new owner, and they were notified, according to law about this meeting tonight. So I didn't receive any information
Okay.
from the property owner to the, I guess I'll call it the east. An additional letter, though, that I think you did receive was a letter of essentially endorsement and support from the property owner to the west, which was not part of the file the last time.
Do you have,
Excuse me, and I do have the letter, the same letter that we had last time from the Shade Tree Commission.
Right.
Unanimously voted to recommend the variance.
right. Do you have anything that you want to add to your written, I believe this is pretty much the same thing as you had before. Do you have anything that you need to add?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to emphasize that, I mean, the traffic, it's going to be walk traffic, it's not going to be people parking cars. It's going to be very light operation, no deliveries involved, so, because that was the concern last time.
Yeah, the market that you're interested in is still foot traffic, people coming in from downtown who are already there for whatever reason.
Excuse me?
The people that you're interested in doing your trade for are the people who would be downtown already for whatever reason at the university or who work downtown, but they'll be on foot in any case.
Definitely, yeah.
Not all of them, but it is an area where.
Right. Well, there is also some street parking, but not a lot, but there is, when I went down to look at it today, there were all kinds of parking spaces.
Oh, yeah, there's.
I was
yeah,
surprised
plenty
how
of-
many parking places there were.
Plenty of parking spaces.
Yeah.
Meter parking.
Okay. All right, if there's anything further that you have to say, you'll have another opportunity at the end. And for now, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who's wanting to speak in favor of the variance or in general comment about the variance? Did you want to say something about it when you came in?
I am just gonna say
Okay.
the same.
Okay, if you want to, I think you were coming in late, so I need to
Yes.
I need to swear you, but we can do it when you get to the podium.
My name is Maxine Randy.
And do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Thank you. And your name is,
Maxine Randy.
and your address?
For the business is
Uh-huh.
104 West Union.
Okay, thank you.
And most of the business that we do, we're a bicycle shop, but a lot of it is foot traffic and/or they come in and bicycle. And even for the restaurants around us, and there are quite a few, a lot of them are foot traffic. And it has not, I don't know what hours were you, because I missed that part. But
Well, we
even
can
when the
talk about that.
cafe was there, parking was not a problem.
Okay. So, and in the letter that you wrote to us, you indicated that you were very interested in seeing a business go in there.
Yes, because it's becoming
Yeah.
derelict. We've taken green paint several times and painted over all the graffiti and things that shouldn't be on that wall, just so it doesn't look really
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
And we don't want to keep it up.
Well, it drags down the whole...
Yeah, whole area.
area to have it be standing empty. Okay, so does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Rantain? Or Ms. Maxine Rantain?
Yes.
no.
No questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is anyone else here speaking in general comment, or would you like to come to the podium?
I was sworn in. I'm Bill Morgan, 36 Cable Lane, but I also own the property at 92 West Union, adjacent to this location. And Actually, I was the previous owner, but their corporation did some changing, so I'm still the owner of the adjacent property. Last time I spoke against it to some degree, but in reality, I'm for it. I'd like to see a restaurant. I'd like to see a business there. And I encourage it, so I'm not sure whether in the positive or the general or the negative, but whatever. I still have concerns about parking. In the previous restaurant that was there, the delivery trucks were constantly pulling into my parking lot, and I would feel comfortable if I had assurance that a space would be available for any deliveries. They may say that there's no deliveries, but everybody has deliveries, and to not use our parking lot and to maintain it properly, which I'm sure they will do, and meet all the codes. I'm in favor of it. I think it's be a good idea. So I guess I'm in favor of it. So
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? All right. Mr. Sheikh, do you have anything further that you want to say at this time?
Yeah, I mean, basically, as I said before, I mean, we have other businesses and we do most of our shopping, so there would be no delivery involved. But if we had to deliver something using my car, we park right in front. There is a meter there. You can use.
What is your intention for the 2 parking places that are there?
I mean, that we can use it. I can use it to park my car or another employee. Yeah.
I
And
think those
we
two-
can.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
We can use that also, like if we do any type of delivery, but I mean, delivery would be minimum.
But those 2 spaces should be maintained as parking for you or your employee or delivery or a customer. They should be maintained as parking spaces.
We'll do that, yeah.
What will the hours of operation be for the business?
The hours of operation would be 11 to 11.
11 to 11?
Yep, coffee shop, so.
Well, any other questions, anybody? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well then, discussion from the floor now is closed, and we're ready to deliberate and render the decision. Does anybody want to make this motion? Don't everybody speak at once. Who would like to frame the...
I move that we grant a variance to the property at 102 West Union Street from 2311, Table B, off-street parking requirements, to permit a use requiring 6 accessible parking spaces where 1 accessible and 1 non-accessible spaces are provided, with the provision that as long as the mature trees there are healthy, that they be maintained. And I guess that's it, unless you want to add something else.
No, you mentioned about the 2 parking spaces being...
Well, they are in here, 1 accessible and 1
Yeah,
non-accessible.
that
so
it's gonna stay
they're
there.
in there.
All right. No, I don't have anything I want to
Second.
add. Okay, second. Right, then, moved and seconded, what are the
Chance to
circumstances?
copy the findings from last time into this file.
I,
No, we don't have them, do we?
we don't have
Well,
them, I didn't bring them in, I
I
should
just
have.
think we can go through this very quickly.
I think we can go through it quickly, but basically, I do hope we don't have to do this again. I really hope this business starts right up. I don't think we'd want to do it a 3rd time. The difficulty and hardship caused by the property is as it is and cannot be made different without running into the regulation about the trees. It would be serving no practical purpose to try to turn that
They
into a
cannot
parking lot.
have 6 spaces. The 6 spaces
No.
are not
They
there.
just aren't there, no matter what you do.
And so the business will remain derelict and unattractive.
Right.
So it better be put to some use. And the patio is considered attractive. The trees are among the few that are along the street and deserve to be maintained.
It can be a lovely spot. Right now, it's not. And the exceptional circumstances Well, the circumstances that are exceptional are the same. If the patio is already there, you can't put parking there, really, that would be sufficient. And putting it there would destroy something that's preferable, so. What about preservation of equal property rights? Would interpreting the code literally deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others?
Well, I'm not really familiar with how many parking spaces other businesses along that street have, but, Mr. Pearson might know whether everybody else has, every business has 6 parking spaces or 8 spaces or whatever. I doubt that they do, but.
There are some businesses that have a minimal amount of parking, and
Right.
it's probably half and half, those that have a minimum amount and those that have none.
Yeah, so some have none, so it's not going to be that different probably from at least some
Yeah.
of the other businesses on the
Plus, the
street.
street parking is available most of the time over there. It's not
Yeah,
like there's
it
no
is.
other choice.
Right.
Is this a minimum variance required to make reasonable use of the property?
In this case, I think it is.
Yes.
Yes, I do too. Would granting the variance be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties?
No, it would be
No.
helpful to them.
Yeah, it's been, the testimony here is that it would not be. And the variance sought must not be of a general or recurring nature, is it?
Yep.
No, okay. Are we,
Yes.
Betty's ready to say yes, Greg?
Yes.
Yes.
And I too will say yes. I hope you start your business up quick. It really needs to be done. Okay. Moving right along. Our third case this evening is for 108 Sunnyside Drive, which is zoned R1. Wilson Deaton is our appellant, requesting a variance from 2311 Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls to permit demolition and enlarged reconstruction of a deck, which will create a 36% lot coverage where 30% is the permitted maximum. And Steve, do you have anything that you need to add to that? To clarify?
Included in the packet of information that I provided to each of you should be a copy of the description of the parcel from the Athens County Auditor. It shows the condition of the property prior to the demolition of a deck on the rear of the house. It's indicated as Area D on this auditor's drawing as a 9 by 11. I believe WDK stands for wooden deck. So that's what was there before. The original application that I had was for a deck of a different dimension, but the final amendment to the plan should have been copied in your packet of information. It shows the deck going from 9 by 11 to 10 by 20. So it's 200 square feet now, where before it was 99 square feet. So it's going to double just about in size. And then there was a note about the revision date too, when this came in revised. We have a letter from the appellant in support of his arguments. And one other thing I would like to add, on occasion, I know at the last meeting you asked a particular property if a variance had ever been granted at that property before. And Officer Eschenbacher was very diligent in providing me with that information. This property has in the past received 2 variances in 1979 and in 1991. In 1979, it was to rebuild a garage 1.5 feet from a property line. So that was in 1979. In 1991, there was a variance granted to construct a carport, which I'm, given the situation here, I'm just going to have to assume that had to do with excessive lot coverage. So there has been a variance granted previously for excessive lot coverage for the construction of the carport in 1991.
Okay, when they put on the carport, that's when the lot coverage exceeded the permitted maximum.
Right.
So it was
So
already
there was a
there.
variance granted at that time for lot coverage. And so this is actually expanding that variance by approximately 100 square feet in order to
So the
Double
overall
the
expansion is only 6%.
still, even with this additional 100 square feet,
With the previous
yeah, it's
and now it's-
36%. I'm going to guess the other variance probably was for 33%, something like that. Because these lots, most of these lots, as you know, you hear quite a few cases for properties in this neighborhood. In general, the lots are around 5,000, 5,500 square feet in area, which is about It's around 3,000 square feet smaller than what would be required now. So those, those building areas are quite a bit smaller than what would otherwise have been platted since,
Yeah.
we'll say, just say the institution of the zoning code in 1960. That neighborhood probably was platted sometime, it might even been before the turn of the century, right about the turn of the century.
It's a whole different kind of neighborhood with a whole different kind of objectives. Okay, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mr. Deaton, are you ready to make your presentation? Could you state your name and address for the record and affirm that you've been sworn?
My name is Wilson Deaton. I live at 108 Sunnyside Drive, and I was sworn in earlier today.
Thank you. Okay. What can you tell us about your plans?
Basically, the old deck was derelict, so I wanted to rebuild it, but make it a little larger because the previous deck was very small. You couldn't even get a table with an outside table with 4 chairs around it and still be able to use the stairs down. So now we're making it much lower to the ground so we can't see into our neighbors' yards over their fences, so that we're down out of the way, just to make a nice living space in the process of redoing our entire yard and entire house.
How far off the ground is your proposed new deck going to be?
The deck top will be about 12 inches, and the bottom of the joist will be about 2 or 3 inches.
Okay, so it's quite low to the ground, and certainly is not going to be something that's even visible from for your neighbors. Which is the point.
Exactly.
Okay.
Except this is not a corner lot.
It is a corner lot, yes.
You'll be able to see it from the street. You'll be able to see it from the street.
Yeah, you'll be able just to see it from the street, but has anybody else gone over to see the place?
Yeah.
You will.
Well,
It's just,
yeah.
the part of the street, you mean where you come in by where the garages are, right? Yeah. Not intrusively, so.
No, certainly not.
And
The deck is going to be open, not covered by any way, form, or shape, right?
No,
gonna
it's
be
just
open deck, right?
just have a handrail around it for safety for meeting code, and that's about it.
my observation is that it's sort of is going to serve as much as a patio as it would be serving as a deck. It's just a sort of slightly high patio. with
Essentially,
an
and yes.
Extremely low deck.
Yeah, and a little nicer looking maybe, because you can decorate the hand railing and stuff. Yeah. I feel like we have a bit of hardship because almost everyone else on our street and really the next surrounding 6 streets have, nice decks and yards that look done up and stuff. And so without it, I feel like we're entering an area where our yard looks significantly different than everyone else's. I don't feel like it's anything special because it's not large. The deck right next door is bigger by a fair bit, almost by 100 square feet. I think it's the minimum variance because it's not very large, it's low to the ground, it's nothing special. I don't think it's a detriment to the neighborhood, and I feel like it's even making the neighborhood nicer, increasing the property values. And I don't think it's a general nature, but I guess you guys would know more about that than I would. And I believe there were also other variances of the same type granted on my street and in surrounding streets because of our small lot sizes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions at this time? No. Okay. All right. Well, we don't have any questions just yet. We might shortly, but thank you very much.
Of course, thank you.
Does anybody present want to speak in favor or in general comment or in opposition to this variance? Okay. Well, I already sent you back to your seat, but if you suddenly thought of something else you'd like to say, this would be the time to do it. Otherwise, we'll close the comments from the floor and proceed. Who would like to frame the resolution? Would somebody other than...
Okay, I move in case 08-14V, 108 Sunnyside Drive, Zone R-1, Wilson Deaton. Appellant is requesting a variance from 23.11 Table A Schedule of Bulk Controls to permit demolition And a large reconstruction of a deck creating 36% lot coverage or 30% is the permitted maximum.
And did you want to say that you're making this in substantial conformance with the plans as submitted and keeping it uncovered?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And is there a second for that? Second. All right. Well then, the practical difficulty.
The existing deck is so small, I guess it's not usable for what we want to do, so that's the difficulty.
Any exceptional circumstances applying to the property?
Lot is not exactly 8,000 typical lots with 30% is kind of so it's a smaller lot, I guess that's probably.
It is a small lot. The lots in the neighborhood are small, but this one already has other buildings on it that sort of prevent
Well,
him from
I guess
doing
you
it,
could
but-
really say the garage and the carport
Yep.
are way back here at the back of the lot, and probably, although they're oddly configured, it's probably no bigger than an ordinary garage. Or I don't know, maybe it's a little bit bigger, where we got 36 feet here.
36 feet by
36, but it's something that I can't determine there. I don't know how big ordinary garages are. So,
But anyway,
yeah.
well, also the other circumstance, I guess it applies more to the plans than it does to the property, but it will become property then, and that's that the deck being proposed is such a low one. So usually people are putting sort of like boat docks on their house, on their back. The preservation of equal property rights he addressed, in that most people these days seem to have decks, and others in the neighborhood do. So if we literally interpreted the code, he wouldn't be able to have a deck at all, other than this little sort of landing, which is basically what he has now. And the variance, the minimum variance, it seems that he's only increasing the size
6%.
just very
Yeah.
slightly, right?
Typically 6%, we have always considered to be minimal.
Fairly minimal. Okay. Would granting the variance be of any detriment to the adjacent properties? There's no one here tonight who seems to think so. Neighbors were given the opportunity to object if they wanted to. And I can't see what detriment would be. And general nature? It's not something that's of a general nature over the entire town. All the R1, it's fairly general in that neighborhood, but it's not in R1 neighborhoods as a rule. So, does anybody have anything to add?
Well, I can add that we gave a variance last time to a property on Maplewood for essentially the same sort of thing.
Okay,
It's just around the corner.
it is just around the corner, exactly. Okay. All right then. Greg, do you want to vote first this time?
I vote yes.
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 Betty? And I too vote yes. I hope you enjoy your deck and continue all that lovely landscaping work that I saw today. Thank you. Okay, our last case on the agenda this evening is 0815 ISV for 19 South Congress Street. It's Zone B3. Jack Stouffer is our appellant, and would you like to be heard this evening, or have you decided that you would like to continue?
I've decided I'd like to be heard.
Okay.
I'm under time constraint, and I...
Okay, yes, I recognize that you are. All right, then, Steve, what can you tell us about this case that we might not already know?
The first thing I need to do is correct a clerical error on the agenda. The zone is R3 as opposed to B3. It was properly advertised as R3.
But it was
multifamily
advertised as
residential.
R3.
It was advertised correctly.
Okay,
So it's R3 as opposed to
R3.
B3.
I looked at all the wrong stuff.
And the reason that there are so many abbreviations after the case number is that Mr. Stauffer is asking the board for three different things tonight. The first thing that he'd like to do is to ask that you interpret the refusal that he was given. In other words, did I err, or is the current interpretation of the code in error as applies to this project? So that's the first argument that he would like to make, not to request a variance, but to ask that the administrative decision be reviewed by the board. The second letter, letter S, is for substitution of non-conforming use. One of the problems with this property is that it has 3 residential structures on it, where only 1 is permitted. And I believe right now there are 23 permitted residents with 8 parking spaces, so that's another non-conformity that exists. And so then I think if we get that far, then Mr. Stauffer will present that, this is less objectionable than what's there now, which is the criteria for substitution of non-conforming use. In the third case, then he would then ask for a variance, essentially from the section that requires 23 parking spaces, 1 for each tenant on the property.
Could you say again how many spaces there are?
I believe there are 8 parking spaces there existing right now.
And currently, he has 12 tenants?
The number of bedrooms and the number of tenants are not exactly the same. I believe the permit for all 3 buildings right now is for 23 residents. But I believe if you ask Mr. Stauffer how many people actually reside there, people are less likely to double up in rooms now than they used to be. So what's permitted by code and what is practical or traditional may be different. And so there may be facts presented about max occupancy and real occupancy at the site.
Okay. Any questions for Steve at this time? Okay. All right, thank you, Steve. We're ready for the presentation for this.
I was sworn in earlier this evening. My name's Jack Stauffer. I live at 62 Sunnyside Drive. The reason Mr. Pearson described the case to you the way he did was that's the way I told him. He said, you've got 3 chances to be successful. So I said, well, it makes sense to me to take 3 chances of being successful. Now, I'm going to get into the meat of the subject here in just a second. To be honest with you, I want you to consider all 3 things. I hesitate to ask you to entertain the possibility of the administrative review because my intent is not to undermine the intent of the administration or the board. I've thought about this and I've studied on it and I've researched it, and to me the most likely scenario that fits the situation is the substitution for a less objectionable non-conforming use. But since I have 3 chances to get you to concede that I'm not trying to use or abuse the system, but merely operate within the system, that explains why Mr. Pearson said what he said. I'd like for this to be a 2-person presentation. I want to say a few things, and then I want to introduce Mr. Bill Morgan, who I thought I should hire to make everything clear mechanically to you folks. I want to explain the logistics of the situation that I have, and I want to read to you or have you read into the record the letters that I have. And then I would like Mr. Morgan to talk about the nuts and the bolts of the amount of repairs and things that we need to do to bring the property up to the standards that the public demands and that I want to provide. So whenever I'm supposed to approach, I'd like to give you pictures of some pictures that are taken. And when Mr. Morgan approaches, he'd like to go over the plans with you, and then I'd like to say a few things. So should I bring you the pictures now?
Yes, please. Uh-huh.
And am I going to bring you the letters, or will I read them to you? Or
You can read them, or I will read them. How many letters are there? My
6?
6. What I generally do when there's several is to pick a couple of them that are representative and indicate who the letters are from, and but you could do the same thing.
Okay. I just want to reiterate the lack of opposition to my case.
Good. Thank you.
As I said earlier, my name's Jack Stoffer, 62 Sunnyside Drive, Athens. I'm approaching you about a project that I have already undertaken because there are 3 buildings on the lot. I've completed phase 1 of my anticipated 3-phase project to upgrade my properties, and phase 1 has been completed. But let me just
So, phase 1 was in the white building.
phase 1 was in the building that you see in picture number 1.
Okay.
Let me just, if I may, I'm going to try to read this to you so I don't get mixed up, and I try to make it clear. I get nervous in a situation like this, and I'm going to do my very best to be calm, polite, firm, professional, and give you a clear perspective of my situation and all the facts. I'm going to, for the most part, read the entire presentation to you. With me this evening is Bill Morgan, who is with Reeser Valentour and Callahan, who I've hired to make a site plan and give you his detailed plan and interpretation of the subject property, which, if you flip to the page number 2, or picture number 2, picture number 2 shows the very rear of the front building that I have already, in the past, recent past, applied for 2 different building permits because I did it in 2 different sections. And when I did that in that front building, I combined 2 small, cramped apartments into 1 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, so I could put in the amenities that are needed and demanded by today's potential tenant. I've actually upgraded the entire building. On the first floor of the property in front, there are 2 1-bedroom apartments, and on the second floor, there were 2 1-bedroom apartments, but because they were cramped and because they had space heaters in them and because we had deteriorating chimneys, I converted the building to all electric, and I combined the 2 1-bedroom apartments on the second floor into a nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath. In all 3 of the apartments in that first building, I put in all new plumbing and separated the utilities. I put in all new electric. I put in new heating and cooling systems, new windows, new roof, new floor coverings, and the building is mechanically and aesthetically on the inside first class. And that's the way I like to do things. Please, if at any point I'm not making myself clear, please ask me or Mr. Morgan questions, because it's very important to me that all of you folks get all the information that I can provide. The facts, I believe, are in my favor, and with your folks' endorsement, I'll be able to upgrade the quality of my property and raise up my property values, which will in turn create more tax income for our community. As I said, to me, it was a three-phase project. Now, what I've done over the last 7 years is to all my properties in town, just to give you, I don't want to take up a bunch of your time, but to all my properties in town, I've put on new roofs, new windows, new heating and cooling equipment, new electrical entrances, new wiring, new circuit breakers, new water lines, new drain lines, new appliances, new water heaters, washers and dryers, and in some instances, dishwashers and garbage disposals. And this includes the front building of the subject property at 19 South, for which I applied for and was granted a building permit. Actually, 2 building permits, because I did it over 2 separate years. And now what I'd like to do is let Mr. Morgan explain to you what we anticipate and hopefully we'll be able to complete in the subject property, which is the middle building, or the first concrete block building nearest the house that you see in the picture.
I've been sworn in. I'm putting on a different hat. I'll bring some plans up.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Morgan, registered architect from RBC Architects in Athens here. What I've handed out to you is 2 sheets, one showing the site plan for the property as it relates to South Congress and to South High Street. And it shows also the existing apartment to the front next to South Congress, and that's been renovated, as Mr. Stauffer mentioned. And the target apartment for the next phase of renovation is the middle apartment D and E, which is shaded. And then there's an existing apartment to the adjacent to the parking lot, existing parking lot on South High, and nothing's designated for that at this phase yet. The next page will show, on A1, will show the existing apartments and the proposed apartments. The existing apartment is that 3rd apartment, 1st floor and 2nd floor, that's to the back of the property or to South High Street. The proposed apartments is that middle apartment that's the target of this requested variance. And then you can see the footprint of the forward apartment. So what we're going to propose here is that we take 4 single bedroom apartments on 2 floors and convert them to 2 apartments with 2 bedrooms, on one up and one down. We are not changing the footprint of the building for the apartment building. We're not changing the number of bedrooms or even the size of the bedrooms for the building. We're not changing the amount of approved parking currently existing. We're actually not even changing the number of bathrooms, although we're going to add a washer and a dryer into one of them. And we're not changing the number of tenants in this project, the approved number of tenants currently on the books. What we're going to do is we're going to upgrade the property to meet the most current standards, and we're going to be making more use of the space, making it more efficient. We're going to combine, take the top floor, if you would please, the proposed apartments, and if we look closely at that, there's 2 bedrooms to the back as they exist now. We have a full bathroom and linen on one side, and we have a shower bath on the other side. Combining that to a shower bath allows us to put a washer and a dryer in that location.
Bathrooms are essentially the same location as currently.
The bedrooms and bathrooms are currently in the approximate same location. As we move forward to the living room and kitchen, by the way, this is exactly the same as it's going to be up and down. There's no difference. We are combining the living rooms and making a larger, more usable living room to the one side. And we're going to make a little bit larger and more usable kitchen. And we're going to be adding dishwasher, garbage disposals, and things like this, as well as the other upgrades that Jack has talked about in terms of painting and new carpet and new roof and all those things that we could do to an apartment and not need a variance for, of course, just in terms of upgrading and normal maintenance. So that essentially is showing you what's happening to these, to what Jack is requesting. He's requesting that we combine 4 singles and make them 2 doubles. Again, not increasing the amount of parking necessary, not increasing the number of tenants required, not changing the footprint. You can tell by the photos that the apartments are a little tired. They meet code currently. Jack will always make sure they meet code no matter what happens, but he is going to upgrade, paint, clean up, do a little structural work to patch some little cracks in some of the walls, put a new roof on, and generally straighten up the property. So I think what we find, and Jack can talk more to this also, but what we're finding is that as we all see new apartments coming into town, and when they're all brand new spanking new apartments with lots of amenities and things like this, that all the landlords that have been around for a long time are going to have to upgrade their properties. We encourage this upgrade. It's better for everyone. And Jack sees that the market is going to require that this upgrade happens. I'll be happy to answer any questions related to this.
Is the cost of the renovation, what is it, 50 or 80% of the original cost has to be less than, what is this, the 50% of the cost of the property before the rules change?
Actually, any change
A new window
would require,
with a dollar value.
well, replacing a window, I think, would not cause the change
Well,
thing
new roof.
to kick in, would it? But a new roof would cause the new, it would have to be something substantial to
It
kick.
was like 50%.
No, it was 60%. Was it 50, 60%?
I think the section that you're referring to
That's if it's damaged.
is section 230504. It's a section called Repair, Replacement of Damaged Buildings, and this is under Chapter 2305, Non-Conforming Uses in Buildings. And it permits repairs or improvements to buildings that are in a non-conforming situation up to 65% of their value. So that's a pretty substantial amount. I don't recall the exact number just at the moment, but I think the cost of improvements as proposed is well less than 65% of the building. So that would be, if you were looking at this as a case of any non-conforming building, what can you do to it? Without having to come back to the zoning board, it's up to 65% of its value. And then there's a whole series of things then that are listed under that section about how you obtain that permit without coming to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So if it's less than 65% damaged, Section A says you have to do that within 1 year of the destruction, or to me, if it was just a deteriorated property, you could then just come in and get it. It says that B, such restoration shall not cause a new nonconformity, and C, that it's done as ordinary repair, replacement of non-bearing walls, fixtures, wiring, and plumbing, as long as you don't expand the cubic area of the building. So none of those things are happening. So it wasn't refused, was not refused on that section of code.
So what is your objection to the decision that Mr. Pearson made?
He refused the permit.
I mean, you said you did not agree with his decision. That's what we are deciding also.
Well,
Let's just ask Mr.
What is the interpretation?
they told me I needed a building permit to,
He
because
was
I'm
denied a
combining
permit.
two one-bedroom apartments on the first floor to make a two-bedroom apartment with two baths. And because I'm combining the two one-bedroom apartments on the second floor to make a two-bedroom apartment with two baths, I was under the impression I needed a building permit, and that's what I submitted for, and that's what I was refused. And Mr. Pearson, I guess, needs to address the fact that, well, he needs to address it.
So,
Yep.
it says right here.
I am reading on this here that Apron is requesting an administrative review by the board
Right.
of the decision that he made. I mean, we
Yes.
don't have that sentence in every case, so why is it in here?
Because he was,
Not everybody asked us for a review of his decision.
Last month we did,
we
We
did,
have had them, we sometimes have them, but we don't
On
have
the
them.
first one, we have to decide whether Mr. Peterson made the right decision or not.
Yes.
I could help
Uh-huh.
clarify a little more if you'd like.
after we've heard his whole thing,
The
yeah.
first thing we can do is decide that, and then we'll move on to the other stuff. But he was refused on
Well, this all-
230801C and 2305.
All these cases are refused. I mean, that's what we are here.
Well, yeah,
But it
it's-
was why it was
We
refused.
can see if his refusal on these two counts made any sense.
Okay, I see that in a two-part decision.
Right.
Yeah, it was actually potentially three.
Three. Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to tell us some more?
Okay, well, I
Clear.
think I got refused because
Because of
the
parking.
interpretation of the word change seems to be
Right.
different today
That's
than
right.
it was last year when they used the exact same code book to allow it.
Well,
They're using the exact same code book this year to
Well-
disallow it, and I think that's the reason I'm standing here.
Right. Well, let's see, the 07 permit says remodel one kitchen, 3 bathrooms, and install 2 new heating and cooling systems. It doesn't say that you,
Right, the earlier building
Combined.
permit from, I believe, April or May of '04.
right, that was combined,
that-
but that
and
was
has the
04.
drawing attached, that's when I actually combined the
Right.
two apartments.
Right, but that was 4 years ago.
It was, it
6/11/04.
was summer of '04,
Yeah,
yes. I completed the mechanical phase of
right,
combining the apartments
okay.
because I didn't have the time nor the money to do it all in one place. So then, last summer, I upgraded the wiring and the plumbing and so on. So I think I'm here because what wasn't changed to kick in this parking regulation now is changed to kick in this parking regulation, even though nothing written down on the code book has changed. I asked when Mr. Pearson told me it was changed and when the mayor told me it was changed. I said, I'm veering off from what I want to prepare, but I'm not changing anything. I mean, I'm improving my building. I'm not asking to change my amount of occupancy. The floor plan is basically the same. We want to take out one kitchen on one floor and one kitchen on the other floor and remodel the kitchen to make it bigger so I can get a dishwasher and a garbage disposer in there, and remodel the bathroom so I can get a washer and dryer in. But I think that's it. But should I read the letters of support, or should I just hand them to you?
But understand, Jack, that's enough change to kick in the,
Well, I think why he's puzzled is why it was not enough change last time
in '04.
in '04. And
The
now-
book hasn't changed, and there's not a
It
definition
is.
of change written down. And if I would have anticipated that somehow change was going to change.
Well, I'm a little
I went up there in
puzzled, too.
December and got a building permit.
Okay. In a minute, we can ask Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, I think
Question.
we need to ask Mr. Pearson.
Should I read my letters of support?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The first one is from Patrick Rose. Patrick Rose owns, on your site plan, you'll see where it says Church Apartments. Patrick Rose owns that property. Athens Zoning Board of Appeals. I've known Jack Stauffer for many years and feel compelled to contribute a few words concerning his situation at 19 South Congress. I also own the property directly next door at 15 South Congress. Over the years, Jack has continually worked to improve his rental properties. He is personally involved in the renovations and mechanical updates and knows how to get the job done right. He does quality work and takes pride in his results. Since there is no change in occupancy requested, I fully support Jack's effort to enhance the housing stock of Athens. Thank you for your time, Patrick Rose. On the other side of my property that you'll see marked Beta House, that's the Beta Theta Pi fraternity, where Eric Kuhn and Les Cornwell are on the board. I spoke with Eric, and Eric was nice enough to give me a letter. To the board of the members of zoning appeals, Jack approached me recently and informed me of his difficulty gaining permission to improve his property next door to our Beta Theta Pi fraternity house. Jack has been a good neighbor for the past 10 years, and Les and I, that's Les Cornwell, as board members, have no objections to his current request to update his property. We do not believe it would be a detriment to our fraternity house or neighborhood, but to the contrary, would help further the improvement of the housing available in the area around and near the campus. Please consider Mr. Stauffer's wish to improve his property for his interests, his future renters' convenience and safety, as well as upgrading the neighborhood and the city where we all live, work, and enjoy. In the back of the property on the High Street side, we have two neighbors. The first one, letter is from Demetrius Prokos, members of the board. Thank you for notifying Mr. Stauffer of upcoming case number, and he gives the number. I would like to let you know I have no objections to his upcoming project at 19 South Congress. If Jack is allowed to improve his property, it will help with the city's goals stated in the comprehensive plan to upgrade the housing stock, thus enhancing all surrounding neighborhood values. Next door to Mr. Prokos' property is a property owned by Leon Hoschauer. Dear zoning board members, I own 21 South High Street, which is located on High Street, across High Street, from the rear of Mr. Stauffer's property at 19 South Congress. As I understand the situation, Mr. Stauffer would like to remodel an existing structure from 4 one-person units into 2 two-person units. Both the total number of allowable occupants and total number of parking spaces would remain the same under the existing situation and under the proposed improvement. Consequently, this proposed change would have no impact on the population density or parking situation of the neighborhood. Therefore, his proposed change would have no adverse impact on my property at 21 South High. Mr. Stauffer plans to invest a good deal of money on his proposed improvements to his property. As a business person, he believes that these proposed upgrades will provide the ever more demanding student housing market with amenities that it desires. This in turn makes Mr. Stauffer's apartments a more desirable place to live. In order to compete with Mr. Stauffer's upgrades, other landlords in the neighborhood will be prompted to improve their properties. The net result will likely improve the quality of life for High Street / Congress Street residents. The alternative of not allowing owners to improve their properties is a recipe for economical and physical decay. I have known and conducted business with Mr. Stauffer for 20 years. In his dealings with me, he has always been an honest man of his word. If he tells you he will install 90% efficiency furnaces, 13 Sear air conditioners, and upgrade the wiring, he will. In conclusion, Mr. Stauffer's proposed improvements are, as I see it, definitely not a more objectionable non-conforming use. I implore you to allow Mr. Stauffer to make his proposed improvements. Leon Hoschauer, PhD, CPA. Across the front of the property on Congress Street, Mr. Cody owns some properties. Jim Cody. Cody Reynolds has several properties across from Jack's property. As an adjoining property owner, we have no objection to his desire to remodel his property. We also have some concerns that are more global in nature. If property owners are not allowed to renovate older properties in an efficient and economical manner, there will be consequences. Failure to renovate older properties will result in gradual but real decline in the overall quality of the rental housing in Athens. Please note that remodeling an older unit usually demands a great deal of removal of plumbing, wiring, bathrooms, and kitchens. This is both expensive and complicated in older units. Some flexibility in moving walls around, etc., is vital. We believe that as long as the total number of tenants is preserved in a given property, then such flexibility should be allowed and even encouraged in order to ultimately upgrade Athens property. I urge you to approve his appeal. I have a letter from a gentleman named Melvin Stedman. Mr. Stedman was a prior head of the code office, and in all honesty is a neighbor of mine on Sunnyside. To the zoning board, I would like to support Mr. Stauffer in his request to upgrade his apartment building at 19 South Congress. Mr. Stauffer has some of the best maintained apartments in Athens. Mr. Stauffer is not changing or enlarging the use. He only wants to upgrade his apartments for the health and safety of his tenants. I have one more letter. This letter is from Mr. and Mrs. Edward Robe, who previously owned the property and sold it to me. Members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, we purchased the property in about 1970 from the previous owners, Earl Bridgewater, Dr. Patton, and I believe a third owner whose name I don't recall. In any event, I would like to provide you with some background information on the property. While we owned the property from 1970 until we sold it to Jack in June of 1998, we maintained the property but did no major renovations or remodeling. There was 12 one-bedroom apartments and 8 parking spaces. We have talked with Jack at times over the years as he has told us of his renovations and improvements to the front building, which when we owned had 4 apartments. We understand from Jack and viewed his documentation that he has asked for and was granted approval to renovate the front building and has completed those improvements in the front building. Work was done in the summer of '04 and completed in the summer of '07 with new mechanical systems. In regards to the 2 back buildings, they were built in the late 40s or early 50s, and Jack, like my wife and I, maintained the property but did not upgrade it. The property in question is in need of improvements, updates, redecorations, as old electric, heating, and plumbing are around 50 years old, and Jack, who I have known for 25 to 30 years, is anxious to update his property. While he has installed new windows to increase efficiency, he wishes to continue his improvements by adding new wiring, plumbing, heating, cooling, washers, dryers, and dishwashers. To combine on the first floor the existing 2 one-bedroom apartments, which have very small kitchens and bathrooms and utility rooms, which will allow enough room to enlarge the kitchen and baths to accommodate high-efficiency washers, dryers, dishwashers, and do the same on the second floor. There would seem to be no negative impact on adjacent property owners or the city in general. To the contrary, this would make the property more efficient and safe for future tenants.
Thank you.
I've prepared my answers and/or explanations for the 6 points of findings that need to be answered or addressed, so please prompt me at the proper time to present to you folks my findings. I've contacted all my neighboring property owners, and with the exception of Mr. Singley, I left a message for him, but did not get a return phone call. I've presented you with the letters, and as Mr. Ruby explained in his letter, the current arrangement of the property in question have extremely small kitchens, baths, and utility rooms, which you could see by looking at pictures number 3 and pictures number 4. The kitchens are very, very small, room for no kitchen cabinets or dishwasher, and the bathroom in each apartment is very, very small, barely room to turn around in, and definitely not room to get even a stacked washer and dryer in. I'm here to defend my property rights. Without the ability to upgrade my property, the government will be condemning me to owning substandard housing. I have pride in my property, and I want to be able to be proud of the property and not worry about what may break down or go wrong next. I realize the code is a good thing. I currently meet the code, but I have 50-year-old buildings. My goal is not to meet the code, but meet the market, which with all the newer properties prompts me, along with my health and safety concerns, to improve my property. Again, we are not asking for a change of use. We are not asking for a change of occupancy. We are not asking to increase density. We wish only to be allowed to bring the property up to today's standards for the same number of people. There will be no change in the footprint. The building will look exactly the same on the outside as it does now, except I want to tuck point all the mortar joints, paint the outside of the building, and install a new roof. The current allowable occupancy is capped at 23 people with 8 parking spots. I have never rented to more than 13 people at any one time. I had a married couple in one apartment once, in apartment number 1. Other than that, I have always rented each one-bedroom apartment to one person. It is my intent to rent my one-bedroom apartments to one person. It is my intent to rent my 2-bedroom, 2-bath, newly renovated apartments, should you allow me, to 2 people. I really need this to pass, and I feel compelled to say to you that I want to make you understand and believe and concede that we can come up with a less non-conforming use. The number 23 is the amount of people that somebody could jam in there. Jack Stauffer is not going to do that. Jack Stauffer is willing to say to the board, to the administration, to the public, that he would be happy to reduce that figure down to 16 or 14, or if it makes any difference at all, even down to 12. So I'm giving you something so I can be a less non-conforming use, so I can renovate the property, upgrade the property, and make it safe. I've got old gas furnaces in there. I got old chimneys. I want to eliminate the gas, eliminate the problem of possible gas leaks and carbon monoxide. I want to get the old wiring and the fuses out of there. These are the things I'm trying to do.
Would you like to say anything about what eliminating the gas will make possible? Possibly. You mentioned to me today that you might be able, when you can take that gas meter out, it might be
Yes,
possible to
I
put
do
in
want to
another-
go that extra step.
Okay.
It's right here. I can create 1 or 2 more parking places on the property after I get all the gas off the property and I have no need for the gas. I don't know if Mr. Morgan's drawing shows it or not, but in the very rear of the property where you see the parking lot as it exists, on the Beta House side where there's a slight angle in the parking lot, there's a big old gas regulator and there's a garbage shed. Now, I can 100% take away the gas meter after the renovations are complete. And if necessary, I can tear down the garbage shed and create another spot. I hesitate to want to tear down the garbage shed because the topography is such that if you've got a bunch of trash cans sitting around,
Yeah.
it's not going to lend itself to
It doesn't seem desirable to take down that.
to be
Trash
logical. In picture number 2, that shows the subject property, in the far back to the left of that white pickup truck, it shows the garbage shed. Farther on down, you
Okay.
can't see the gas meter, but that's
And what
the
is-
area.
What's the garbage shed doing now?
It's where all the
It's
trash
just a
cans
little,
are
it's just a
collected.
little garbage shed where all the trash cans are to keep them out of sight and to keep them from
But
spilling
they
out.
have to go somewhere, don't they? The garbage cans have to go somewhere.
Yes.
So.
So
yeah,
I could
there
put them
will
in
be-
between the buildings and tear the shed down. I'm going to do or want to do whatever you ask me or tell me to do. I just need this to work out somehow. I'm willing to concede almost anything you desire to make it work. Now, may I answer any questions about anything I've said at this time?
If you were going to create the 2 new parking spaces, at what point could they be created?
The 2 parking places can't really be created until I get the gas out of the middle building and until I get the gas out of the back building, which would be at the end of next summer or during next summer, not during this summer. Now, what I can assure you of and prove to you through paperwork is I've got my apartments all rented for next year, and in reality, only 6 of the 8 parking spots are being occupied in this coming season. So in reality, I'm only going to be using this year 6 of the 8 spots. I've been there for 10 years, and I just explain to people that I only have 8 parking spots and I have 12 apartments, so I don't rent to people that have cars in excess of 7 or 8, and usually there are 8 there. But this year, somebody bailed out at the last minute at the end of May who had taken reserved 2 parking spots, and the new people didn't have cars, so in reality, only 6 of the parking spots will be utilized this summer.
If we were going to reduce the 23 to maybe a lower number, and what is the minimum number that you would be happy with?
He said 12.
Well, the minimum, sir, the minimum number that I'm going to be happy with,
Ask again, you said 14, 12, 13. What is the minimum that you would be happy with?
the minimum I would be happy with would be 14.
Okay.
The minimum I'm going to let you vote on is 12 because I have to have 3 votes, and I want 3 votes, and I need 3 votes. So if you want me to say 12, then sir,
Okay.
that's what I'm
happy
going to
with
say.
14, so.
I'm happy with 12.
Okay.
All right.
Because
Okay,
I
then
just need to
let's-
please you, and I want to please you. I want to make it work.
Okay, well, I have a question that's not, it's not really necessary, but I noticed that there's the stump of a very large tree in this picture number 2.
Yeah.
And it made me think about landscaping, and I had a question as to whether there are any plans for landscaping this area.
Let's fill those out now. You tell me.
I'm not a landscaper,
Well,
but
I'm
it
not
seems
a
to me a couple
landscaper,
of
but I'm pretty
trees
good
could...
at landscaping, and here's what I'm going to say to you. If you say, Jack, add a tree, Jack adds a tree. If you
Well,
say
I'll tell you
Jack
what.
add 3 trees, Jack adds 3 trees.
How about just some nice lilac bushes? I've got some baby ones in my yard you can have.
I will put in any tree, any bush, anything you request. That's what I will do.
So some shrubs would be nice.
Just some shrubs. You know, actually, I don't see that, I don't know whether there's room there. I wasn't paying attention this
I
afternoon.
didn't, by the way, I
Whether or
didn't
not
cut
there's room
that,
for
I
a
didn't
tree,
cut
but-
that tree down out of spite or meanness. It fell over.
I didn't think you did, but it's what made me think of the landscaping, seeing the stuff. It made me think, oh, yes, well, at one time there was a tree, perhaps there could be again. I would think
And
that
indeed there can.
landscaping would be a good thing to plan for.
There can be a
If
tree
you want to
there.
take Betty up on her offer.
I want to do whatever she wants me to
Okay.
do.
All right. Does anybody have any additional questions at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay. Did you have anything further that you wanted to say? Or Mr. Morgan, did you have anything further that you feel necessary to say at this time?
I think most everything's been covered that I need to cover. I'll answer it.
Okay. I think we do want to hear from Steve at this time to find out why it was that the first one was acceptable and the second one was not in this ongoing project that he has.
Section 230801C of the Athens City Code that requires parking for any change or addition to a structure or its use. When that ordinance was adopted, that was under a previous administration. The interpretation of that section necessarily then for a kind of a definition or administrative interpretation of what the word change meant had to tie into Chapter 2305 nonconforming uses, because it's talking about nonconforming parking essentially. So do you have a relationship between nonconforming parking and nonconforming buildings? The interpretation at that time was because parking was driven by the number of residents. If there was no change in a request to renovate a building where there was nonconforming parking, then there was no nexus. There was no reason to require or go to that section to require parking because it was the same amount of people. There was no change.
Okay.
So that the direction in the past had been to focus toward change being change in the number of people.
Right?
And I have in the past, I had a year or two ago, I actually brought you a case for a variance for parking for someone that just wanted to add a bathroom because it was an addition. There was no other way to say, an addition. It says right there, an addition requires parking. But change was interpreted differently in the past. If there was not a change in people, then it didn't drive parking. So that was a previous administration's interpretation. And that's why the two previous permits had been issued without note of nonconforming
By
parking.
previous administration, you mean previous mayor?
Previous mayor and service safety director.
I see.
And we have a new mayor and service safety director now. And part of the campaign of the mayor was to tighten up code and code enforcement. He campaigned on that issue, and this is one example of it, and it's different. The applicability of the word change to parking is obviously different now with this administration. And anytime we have a situation where there's non-conforming parking or non-conforming numbers of buildings, you're going to start hearing those cases, unless you say otherwise tonight, that the new interpretation or the new application of the code is incorrect. And that's the first question on which Mr. Stauffer has asked you to act. Were these approvals the right way to do it, or was the refusal the right way to do it? And then in the second case, if you find that, there's administrative latitude to interpret, there's nothing wrong with the administration's new interpretation. It's been pointed out, and it is true that no words have been changed. There's been no amendment to the language.
So it does make a situation for a person who is proceeding with a long-term improvement of his plan for improvement of his property to have suddenly have a change like this take place where there is no change in the code.
language,
To have a
exactly.
sudden change in the interpretation of the code does strike me as a bit of placing a bit of a hardship on that particular person. So from where I'm sitting, there's a problem. It might not be the case if it were not some ongoing plan that had been for the same property that had been decided one way in the past, to have it suddenly be decided another way in the present for that one property. To have someone new coming in with a new plan that had never been presented before to be decided differently, that to me is a horse of a different hue. But
I think, I understand what you're saying, but I think I would like to propose that we recognize that Mr. Pearson was correct in following the new interpretation of the code in the case of 230502 and 230801.
he's got a new boss. He's got a problem
He's got
too.
a new boss, okay.
So,
But I'm perfectly willing to recognize that his interpretation is correct. That meant that it came to us, and then we can decide what to do in the alternative, and there are alternatives.
Yes.
So I'm willing to say his interpretation is correct, and then I'm willing to
address the problem.
address the problem. And it seems to me that, in fact, I would like to move to recognize that allowing reorganization of the existing four one-bedroom apartments into two-bedroom apartments is a substitution of non-conforming use for a not more objectionable use. And to that, I would add the condition that we limit the number of tenants to, in this building,
Yes, ma'am.
4 tenants.
Yes, ma'am. I total agreement and compliance, and we'll always agree and comply.
And that the changes be made in conformance with the plans as presented.
I would be comfortable with that if Mr. Stouffer would be comfortable with that. If we're going to
Consider
sort
me
of
comfortable.
negotiate this before we start doing anything else,
I just would
how
like to
about,
move it along.
how
We've
about
heard a
the
lot of
rest? How
information.
about the rest of you? Do
I
you have
think
any
very
other?
comfortable.
There's a
what
motion
she
on the
said.
table. You
Yeah.
can either
Yeah.
second it
Okay.
or not.
I agree with everything you said, and
Well, we haven't, had the testimony from the floor ended yet.
I've
so-
heard a lot of it.
Yes,
I've
well,
heard a
we've-
lot of testimony.
We've
I've
heard a lot,
enough.
but we need to sort of get this a little bit
we've
formalized.
We've heard letters of support.
Yep.
We've been presented with the
Well,
plan.
let's formalize
We've
it
heard-
by saying,
I formalized
that
it with a motion. It's
with-
been seconded.
we haven't yet said that the testimony from the floor has been completed because he
Well,
has the option
He would
after
like to
Steve
read it.
speaks.
Okay.
He has the
Next time.
option of
Okay, I will
doing
withdraw
that
my
thing.
motion until a later
But I
time.
want that motion. It's a great motion. I just want to make sure it's all in order. Okay. Steve, had you anything further that you needed to say?
Right. My understanding is we might be approaching the fact that the board is upholding the current interpretation of the administration and heading for the second situation where it's substitution of a non-conforming use for a not more objectionable.
That's exactly where we're going.
Exactly.
And-
The reason that's the, procedurally, I guess, the more desirable approach is because when you go through a variance, you have to go through a whole set of findings.
Right.
Where substitution of non-conforming use, we've been
Right.
through this before, has no standard. You just have to make an interpretation that it's
And
it's
that's-
better than it's a lot better than
The
what's
building
there
will
now.
be-
And I,
the tenants will have a better living space, it will be more safe, it will be more attractive, it will be an improvement in the neighborhood, and if we can reduce the number of tenants in the overall building, then I think that would probably be a good thing.
so it was my understanding that, that would be the next step that we would go to
That's
if
where
you
that's where we're
uphold the
going next.
interpretation part. My understanding was the motion was to uphold my interpretation
Yes.
and to approve a substitution of a non-conforming use for a not more objectionable non-conforming use based on the presentation of the information this evening.
That's
And that's
right.
what the motion will be, as soon as I get the opportunity to ask Mr. Stouffer if you're finished then.
That's fine, yes.
See if Mr. Stouffer has anything further he wants to add.
I would like to add this next page that I've methodically written down, and I don't want to be too much because
Okay, let's-
I'm
don't beat us
liking
up
what
too
I'm
bad
hearing
with
so
it, just-
far. To me, this seems the most logical. As stated in 230502A, substitution. Substitution for a non-conforming use of another not more objectionable non-conforming use. I realize that this is where the code book and common sense come together. I'm here
Okay.
to defend my property rights. I want to encourage you to give me relief. Change seems to be the key word. You guys have already addressed that, and I'm willing to, like I say, reduce the number of
Okay.
people in this building to a total of 4, 1 for each bedroom. And I'll sit down and be quiet, and may have something
Down
on
the road,
rebuttal
you're
if
going to
necessary.
remove that, down the road, you are going to attempt to put in 2 new parking places when you have
The gas meter.
the gas
removed.
meters out, but that is down the road, but that's the intention that you
Next-
are stating for the
that's
record.
next summer.
Okay.
Yes. Now, I just addressed the tenants in this building rather than the 3 buildings, because all we're dealing with tonight is the 1 building.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and you will, I'm afraid, be back. But anyway,
Yeah, I don't want to undermine the administration by
No,
asking for
we
administrative
recognize
review, but I do, but you've read between the lines that, yes, I want to make this building very nice, and next summer, I want to make my next building very nice. But I don't want to undermine a possible yes vote tonight by giving you too much information. I do have a case that I've researched that you did grant of a less non-conforming use that seems to be very similar to mine that we could get into if you feel it necessary.
I don't think it's necessary. I think you've got it well covered. Thank you very much. And now I think everything from the floor is closed. Betty, will you give us that motion again, please?
Let's ask Mr. Eschenbach.
Unless
whether he'd be
you already
sorry
have
about
it.
Motion is to allow reorganization of this building from 4 units to 2 as a substitution with the condition of no more than 4 tenants in this building, and that the changes be made in conformance with the plans as submitted. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Anybody want to add anything to that?
Yes, he puts up 2 bushes.
Yeah. Plant some shrubs. Yeah.
And landscaping.
Betty
Just put
County, your
landscaping.
choice. Your choice.
Well, I'll give you some Betty ones from
No,
the
this is not a variance. What we've determined is that this proposal that he has made, we're proposing anyway, that his proposed change is a less objectionable non-conforming use than the current non-conforming use. And considering the condition that the apartments currently are in and the things that he's planning to do to them, to upgrade them, it strikes me that this is substantially in that category of a far less objectionable non-conforming use than currently is the case.
Well, let's do the first one first about whether it's
We've
correct.
already done that.
Oh, yeah.
Done.
We haven't voted, we haven't.
Oh,
No,
okay.
yea or
we'll
nay.
vote on that,
So I propose that we recognize that Mr. Pearson interpreted the code correctly.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. We're all in favor of that. That was well interpreted. Now,
Now we have the motion.
we've got the
He's got
motion.
the
The motion is on the floor, and
It's already been seconded.
it's been seconded. And do we have any further discussion?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
I'll second.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Yes,
Yes.
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 okay, done.
Good.
Thank you very much.
It's going to be beautiful what you're doing. I went in and saw what's there. It's 1940s, post-World War II. The guys are back from the front and going to college kind of stuff. It needs to be done. So. Okay, got a whole bunch of stuff for the file, Steve. And we do also have minutes from last week. We've had 2 people who said they've read the minutes. We did have something that needed to be
I did.
already done.
I just didn't forward it to him. Mr. Goldsey asked that the other business portion of the minutes last month be changed to reflect his comment that in the event of the board member not being able to make it, to let the rest of the board and Steve know as soon as possible.
That's good. Okay, then with that addition to the minutes, can I have a motion to accept them?
I move to accept the minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, they're accepted. Thank you. And we're adjourned.